So hello again. I have greeted you already. So this is the official start of this webinar. My name is Martina Spišiaková, and I work on the knowledge management program of the Asia Pacific Association of Agriculture Research Institutions based in Thailand. It is also called APAARI. This is the abbreviation. APAARI is hosting today's webinar on capacity development for agriculture innovation, bringing system-wide change in Asia Pacific. So I would like to welcome all the participants that have joined us from across South and Southeast Asia, as well as from Africa, Europe, Canada. We are also expecting some other people to join us from the Pacific, from Australia. So I'm hoping to see the number of participants growing. This webinar is organized in collaboration with the Tropical Agriculture Platform, hosted by the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations, as well as the Global Confederation of Higher Education Associations for Agriculture and Life Sciences, also called GCHERA, and Global Forum for Agriculture Research, called GFAR. The main topics of the webinar today will be capacity development for agricultural innovation systems, with emphasis on soft or functional capacities, as well as the introduction of a common framework which has been developed through TAP, with emphasis on different dimensions of capacity development, consisting of individuals, organizations, and enabling environment, as well as the relationship between these dimensions. I would like to introduce Mr. Peter Cassier from GFAR, who is our man behind the scenes. He's doing the technical facilitation of this webinar, ensuring that all technical aspects are in place so that this webinar functions smoothly. Peter will also be helping us filter some questions and comments that I invite you to place to the speakers through the chat box, which you can find in the right panel on your BlueJeans screen. We have over 100 registered participants for this webinar, so I hope that most of them will manage to join us today. More seem to be joining us as I speak. So for those of you who have just joined the meeting, please introduce yourself in the chat box. Tell us your name, your organization, also what you do. And please use the same chat box to comment or post questions to the speakers as we go along. Okay? And also please remember to turn off your microphone and videos. Just keep them off during the webinar, since this is only for the speakers, and you as participants can post any comments or questions through the chat box. So now it is time to introduce today's speakers and the agenda. The first speaker will be Dr. Ravi Ketarpal. He is the Executive Secretary of APAARI, who will welcome the participants. We also have Ms. Manuela Bucciarelli, who is the consultant for the Capacity Development for Agriculture Innovation Systems project, also referred to as CDAYS. You will hear this a lot during the webinar. She's in FAO in Rome, and she will introduce the TAP and the common framework developed through the CDAYS project. We also have Dr. John Kennelly, connecting from Canada. He is the Special Advisor in University of Alberta International and also President of GCHERA, who will highlight GCHERA's contribution to human development and share a success story from Costa Rica. And lastly, we have Dr. Nasreen Sultana. She's the Country Project Manager for CDAYS in FAO Bangladesh, who will share how this common framework that will be introduced to you today is actually used in practice. Okay. So before inviting the speakers, I would like to just remind the participants to post their comments or questions to these speakers that you will hear today in the chat box, okay, on the right side of the BlueJeans screen. And you can do this during or after the presentations. Just please be reminded to indicate the name of the speaker to whom you are posting the question, so that it is so we can refer to it easily, okay? So now to introduce the webinar, I would like to invite Dr. Ravi Ketarpal, who has just joined APAARI as its Executive Secretary. Dr. Ketarpal is the former Regional Director and Regional Advisor on Strategic Science Partnership of the Center for Agriculture Bioscience International, CABI, the South Asia office. So please, Ravi, make your introduction. Thank you.
And Ravi, you will need to unmute your audio and your video.
Thank you, Martina. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone who are in different parts of the world for being there on this APAARI show, which is steered by Martina on behalf of APAARI and with the support of FAO, GFAR, and GCHERA. About APAARI, I would like to say a few words, which is steering the show. APAARI is a 27-year-old FAO-led initiative, which is membership-based, intergovernmental, apolitical, and multi-stakeholder association of agriculture research institutions and even the universities or the higher education centers in Asia Pacific. We have 71 members as on today, of which many are from universities and international research and development centers in Asia Pacific. If you look at the objective of APAARI, what we do, our mission, we promote and strengthen agriculture and agri-food innovation systems through partnership, collaboration, and capacity building for sustainable agriculture development in the Asia-Pacific region. So capacity building is one of the key areas APAARI is working on. And now, of late, APAARI has partnered with FAO on capacity development for agriculture innovation system under a program of Tropical Agriculture Platform. Since 2 years, APAARI has partnered with Tropical Agriculture Platform, which is called TAP in brief. And here I would like to say, if we want to look at the objectives of the webinar, why this webinar? This capacity development, which is one of the key areas of APAARI, is a key to innovation and development in the region. And given the complexity of agriculture development, innovation is critical to address the key development issues. Now, this innovation needs to be based on multi-stakeholder interactions, and we have multi-stakeholder partners in APAARI. It has to be based on learning and addressing not only technical capacities, but also functional or soft capacities to facilitate change and help accelerate motivation. This webinar thus will be targeting all the higher education institutions, as most of the participants belong to there, who are playing a very key role in the transformation of the society through education, especially education of youth, which brings fundamental changes in institution, policy, and economy, which is often underestimated. They are important facilitators of new cultural values, training, and social and economic development, and often they are the key players in any social transformation or cultural transformation, which is so much required. So the important role needs to be recognized of all these educational institutions, and the capacity of the higher education sector needs to be strengthened through changing the mindset about capacity development for strengthening agriculture innovation system. This way, if you look at the very objective of the webinar is to improve the understanding or the apprehensions of the common framework on capacity development for agriculture innovation, which are developed through TAP, the Tropical Agriculture Platform, particularly the different dimensions of capacity development, which consist of not only individuals or organizations and enabling environment capacity, but also relationship between these dimensions. So the objective is also to raise interest in integrating the common framework principles, approaches, and tools in higher education curricula, and to initiate reflection of higher education organizations towards a mindset shift from considering knowledge generation as a final objective to using it as a means to achieve change. Understanding of the system components to systematic understanding of the relationship between the components, and you will see it as we go through the various components of the webinar. It consisting of beneficiaries to facilitate engagement of interactive learning between innovation actors, teaching to learning, and focus on individual merit and competition also for promoting teamwork and collaboration between and within organizations. I'm very sure all the participants will find this maiden webinar, the first webinar of its kind, done in partnership with various agencies, as I mentioned, FAO, GFAR, and GCHERA, and skilled by Martina from APAARI, will really be useful, and probably many of them in future can lead to further strengthening of agriculture innovation system in the region. Thank you one and all for coming, and this is all what I have to say.
Thank you very much, Ravi. Thank you for this introduction and for setting the scene very nicely. May I now invite Ms. Manuela Bucciarelli, who is supporting the TAP Secretariat in FAO in the implementation of CDA's activities in Bangladesh, Laos, and Rwanda. And she's also developing CDA's tools and working on participatory monitoring, evaluation, and learning. Manuela will introduce the TAP initiative and the CDA's project, particularly focusing on the common framework. Manuela, please.
Thank you. Good afternoon to all. Thanks, Martina, for your introduction, and to Dr. Ravi for his welcome remarks. As Martina mentioned, I would like to introduce to the topic of my presentation, which is the Tropical Agriculture Platform, TAP, and the Common Framework on Capacity Development for Agriculture Innovation Systems, commonly known as AIS. Let me first introduce you to the TAP. In the last decades, it emerged that to feed a growing population and to meet the challenges of climate change, agricultural production must intensify in a sustainable way. And innovation is key to make this happen. To address this gap, TAP was launched by the G20 in 2012, and it's supported by the European Union. Next slide, please. TAP focuses on the development of national capacities for agricultural innovation in the tropics, where most of the developing countries are located. Its objectives are to promote greater coherence and impact of capacity development intervention in the AIS. TAP has 45 partners, including national agricultural research, education and extension institutions, and also civil society actors, farming organizations, and also key regional and international fora. It has a steering committee, a partner assembly, and a secretariat, which is supported by FAO. TAP partners have approved the TAP Action Plan, which in 2015 included the development of the Common Framework on Capacity Development for AIS, which I will be presenting in a few minutes. TAP is now developing a new action plan for the period 2018-2021, which includes the integration of the common framework in the higher educational sector. The concept and the principle of the TAP common framework are being tested in 8 countries in the tropics as part of an initiative called CDAIS, which was mentioned before, which is a project implemented by AgriNatura and FAO and funded by the EU. Next slide, please. The work of TAP is focused around 3 main pillars: advocacy and policy dialogue at global, regional, and national levels, the common framework on CD for AIS, which I will explain later, and an information sharing system called Tapipedia that has been set up to disseminate the framework, to share case studies, and to share methodology and lessons learned of TAP partners and other stakeholders. Next slide, please. Here you can see who are the TAP partners. You see many from your region. In addition to APAARI, member of TAP are CABI, ICIMOD, the CGR, Arinena, CACARI, and also some global and regional partners, such as USAID, FAO, IFAD, GCHERA, GFAR, FARA, and so on. Next, please. You see that we have come a long way with the TAP partnership since 2012. I would like just to mention a few of the key milestones. So after the launch in 2015, in 2013, regional needs assessments were conducted. In 2014, funds were mobilized by the EU, and the CDICE project was launched in 2015. In 2016, the 3 main documents of the TAP Common Framework were finalized, and Tapipedia was launched in 2016. At country level, under the CDICE project, we completed the inception phase in all the 8 countries, and innovation partnership or innovation niche have been identified. In addition, a training package for innovation facilitators was developed by Agrinatura and FAO. During this year, in 2017, the Common Framework publication have been translated in French and in Spanish. And at country level, also the validation of capacity needs assessment and marketplace events took place in the majority of the CDICE countries. After this brief introduction to TAP, I will allow now to move to the Common Framework. And my presentation will give you an overview of the main concepts and tools. So the Common Framework on Capacity Development for Agriculture Innovation Systems builds on the IS perspective and emphasizes that agriculture innovation results from a complex interaction of different and diverse actors. Next slide, please. It provides the conceptual approach for capacity needs assessment and related intervention, monitoring, and evaluation of capacity development. The Common Framework considers crucial the role of facilitation, learning, documentation, and knowledge management for enabling agricultural innovation. Next slide, please. All the concepts of the Common Framework are explained in 3 key publications, which are available in English, French, and Spanish. The blue one is the conceptual background, which includes the theory, the concept, the principles, and the main definitions of the Common Framework. Then the guidance note on the operationalization, which provides its approach and tools, and the synthesis document that is a summary of the previous 2 documents. These documents were produced by TAP after an initial study which reviewed the existing resources on capacity development for agriculture innovation system. Next slide, please. Now I would like to show you a graph which illustrates the agriculture innovation system. As you can see, this is a complex network of actors, organizations, and individuals that, together with supporting institutions and policies in the agricultural sector and related sectors, bring existing new products and processes into use. In the innovation system, traditional actors, for example, research and education, are not the only drivers of the process of agricultural innovation. In fact, this approach, consider also the values and the contribution of all other actors, such as the private sector, business enterprises, and value chain organizations, and also the important role played by the so-called bridging institutions, such as multi-stakeholder platform and extension services. The enabling environment of the IS consists of a set of factors that influences agricultural innovation, and it includes both intangible components, such as social conventions, rule of action, values, as well as tangible aspects, such as governance, formal rules and regulation, and policy aspects. And the enabling environment creates the incentive for interaction, exchange, and collaboration among the different actors. And in this context, innovation takes place at different levels, from the individual to the national level. Next slide, please. The TAP Common Framework highlights and focuses on specific functional capacities, which are also commonly known as soft skills, soft capacities, which are essential for agricultural innovation systems and that relate to the 3 dimensions of capacity development, which we heard before: individual, organizational, and enabling environment. And these capacities are needed to work effectively. In particular, the first one, capacity to navigate complexity. This is a shift of mindset and attitudes to understand the larger system and the relationship within the system. Capacity for collaboration, which includes enabling the various actors to understand their diversities and to create awareness about their complementarities. Finally, capacity to reflect and learn, which enable to critically reflect on the process, and capacity to engage in strategic and political processes, which this capacity includes the understanding of power relations and how to influence the politics. These four capacities are at the core of an overarching capacity, which is the capacity to adapt and respond in order to realize the potential of innovation. All these five functional capacities are interdependent and relevant to the three levels and three dimensions of capacity development. Okay, next, please. This graph you see here illustrates the dual pathway concept, which includes two aggregated processes. Like before, please. Yes, so at system level, focusing on functionalities and performance of the system as a whole, without emphasis of any of the specific actors. And then at the subsystem level, the innovation niche, where capacity development takes place around specific innovation agenda. Just to clarify, a niche is a space where a small group of actors become part of a learning process. This graph illustrates the disconnect between actors and intervention at system and subsystem level, and how this can be overcome. In fact, by linking the two levels through a learning architecture, we stimulate learning and strengthening of the agriculture innovation system itself. Next slide, please. A cycle of 5 stages is proposed to operationalize capacity development intervention at the level of niche, organization, or networks. This is not a one-off closed process, but it's a continuum. It's a spiral of action, reflection, and learning. And also the stages should not be seen as consecutive, and in fact, in some countries, in some contexts, they happen simultaneously, or some stages have been merged. What the common framework proposes as a first stage, galvanizing commitment, aims at ensuring that there is a common understanding of CD for the agriculture innovation system, and to create a sense of ownership among the actors. In the visioning stage, the actors become fully aware and ensure their commitment, and also decide on further action and relevant responsibilities. The third stage, the capacity needs assessment, is at the core of the cycle, and it's where and when capacity gaps are identified, and also future intervention. These interventions, in the form of action plans, are then further discussed and elaborated in the capacity development strategy phase. And finally, in the implementation of the agreed plans happen in the later stage, number 5. Next, please. This concept I explained so far are illustrated on Tapipedia. And if you see from the left side, you have the home page of Tapipedia, and you can be directly directed to a page on the common framework, which is an interactive page. And by clicking on each of the graphs that you see, you are directed to a new page that explain and provide information on that particular topic or concept. Next, please. I would like also to mention that TAP has developed a series of fact sheets on the 5 stages of the cycle, and also some tools fact sheets that describe each particular tool that can be used during these phases. In particular, just to mention a few tools that have been developed, we have developed tools on action plan, network analysis, capacity scoring, simulation game, timeline, capacity focus programming tree, rich picture, and scoping study. And this can be all downloaded from Tapipedia. And more tools will be developed by TAP next year. As I mentioned, these concepts and tools of the common framework are being tested under the project called CIDICE. Next, please. This project is currently ongoing in 8 countries in the tropics, which are Angola, Bangladesh, Burkina Faso, Ethiopia, Guatemala, Honduras, Laos, and Rwanda. The project identified innovation niches and conducted capacity needs assessment of these niches. And this process is now implemented through the help of national innovation facilitators who have been trained on the common framework methodologies and are now able to facilitate and to act as intermediary. And also, national level, CIDICE is also working to strengthen capacities of key organizations and also national platforms, which can enable innovation in the country. The capacity development process at both niche and organizational level is guided through a coaching process, which includes a series of reflection and refinement events. And another crucial aspect I would like to highlight of the CIDICE project is the integrated monitoring, evaluation, and learning framework, which allows to capture and measure changes in capacities at the 3 level. Next, please. I would like to show you some pictures, just to show you some of the key moments of this project. For instance, during the inception workshop and the initial consultations with stakeholders, during the baseline and the needs assessment, where some games were conducted, during a facilitation training conducted with the NIFs, the National Innovation Facilitators, and marketplaces events, when innovation niches presented their needs to the service providers in the country. To conclude, I would like to emphasize some potential linkages between the TAP Common Framework, CIDICE, and the higher education sector. In particular, with regard to the TAP Common Framework, academia and higher education institutions could use the methodologies and tools in teaching how to develop capacity for the agricultural innovation systems. In the CIDICE country, they could also help in institutionalizing the framework. Also, in the innovation niches, since these are microsystems, we have representatives from academia and from university, and they have a key role to bring knowledge and technical expertise, but also to promote the common framework methodology within their organizations and institutions, to develop the soft skills that in most of the countries are weak. And we also hope that we can work more with such champions in other countries in the future. That's it. I hope that this presentation was helpful in giving you a good overview of the TAP and the common framework on CD for AES. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Manuela, for this brief introduction of the TAP and the common framework, and particularly for introducing the key concepts under this project, as well as the common framework. I really hope that the participants were able to digest all these concepts, and I would like to encourage them to actually post some comments or any clarifications that they would need on these concepts from Manuela. So participants, please use the chat box and post any comments or questions that you might have for Manuela. And while you are doing this, I would like to invite our next speaker. This is Dr. John Kennelly, who served for 10 years as Dean of the Faculty of Agricultural, Life and Environmental Sciences at the University of Alberta in Canada, and has also served as the president of GCHERA. John will share with us the work that GCHERA is doing to develop human capacity, particularly the pilot project on curriculum reform of agriculture education with emphasis on soft skills, as well as a success story from Costa Rica. So, John, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Martina, and hello, everybody. I'm coming to you from Edmonton, Canada, and it's about minus 14 degrees here this morning, and there's a light snow, so I know that many of you are in much warmer climates. So you've just had quite a detailed presentation on TAP, and so what I'm going to do is touch base on how GCHERA can contribute to some of the goals of TAP, in particular how we can contribute to ensuring that the human resource capacity is developed appropriately, and so that the young people coming out of our educational institutions have the skills to be successful in their careers and to make a difference in their communities and globally, for that matter, in terms of tackling the big challenges that the world faces today. By way of background, as Martina said, I spent 10 years as Dean of our Faculty of Agricultural Life and Environmental Sciences at the University of Alberta. And during that time, I was quite interested in international efforts, in particular the importance of students having international experience, because the challenges that we face today are very much global in nature. No one country or region or institution can solve them. So through that engagement, I became involved with GCHERA. And I guess I talked too much because I ended up being president 4 years ago. And just so you know, GCHERA is very much a virtual organization. We don't have many resources. So what we're trying to do is to use our network to really share best practices. Next slide, please. So it was established in 1998, and initially it was made up of the membership was individual universities throughout the world. And then in 2011, the structure was changed so that we have national or regional associations who make up the membership. And those associations, throughout the world, represent over 900 agriculture and life science universities and faculties across 6 continents. Next, please. So our goals are to encourage mutual understanding and global cooperation, and to provide leadership in education, research, innovation, and outreach in agriculture and life sciences. And bottom line, I guess, is to be a catalyst for the sharing of best practices across our membership, especially in the area of education. Next slide, please. As I mentioned, our membership is global in nature. I've just highlighted some of our association membership in Asia, but you can see that we have membership in Africa, the Americas, Europe, Oceania, and those member associations make up our executive, and we meet at least once a year as an executive to discuss strategy. Next slide, please. So we try to have an influence both within our networks of universities, but also through our engagement in other fora like TAP, for example, and GFAR. And this gives us an opportunity to have some impact in terms of the importance of tertiary education, to ensure that that is recognized as a critical part of agricultural innovation and prosperity in the agriculture sector. Next, please. And these are just some pictures to remind me that we are on the steering committee of TAP. We're also on the steering committee of GFAR. And we also collaborate with other organizations. For example, in Spain, a couple of years ago, we had a giant conference on education. We work with the extension people in GFRAS, etc. So any opportunity we can to engage with like-minded people, we try to take advantage of that, and to again encourage the sharing of best practices. Next, please. The other thing that we do is that we host the World Agriculture Prize. This is something that was started 5 years ago, and the goal of the Agriculture Prize is to highlight the importance of agriculture in terms of obviously, I don't need to tell the audience today about the importance of agriculture in terms of food and nutritional security. So what we try to do with the World Agriculture Prize in collaboration with Nanjing Agriculture University is to recognize those people who, through their lifetime contributions, have made a huge impact either in education, research, or outreach, or a combination of all those areas. And so that agricultural prize comes with $50,000 US. And next year, actually, we have what we call the double-double. There will be 2 World Agriculture Prize. Each of them will come with $100,000 US award, and there has to be at least one award given to scientists in developing countries. And country as well. Again, we feel this is part of a larger effort to highlight the importance of agriculture, and this is why we'll continue to focus on that. Next slide, please. So a couple of years ago, we went through a process of strategic planning. We had a number of workshops, global workshops, and we decided that there are many organizations that are engaged on the research side, but when you look at on a global level, there is much less emphasis on education. Even though it is the central mission of universities, we often find that education is not, even though we talk about it, we don't give it the level of emphasis that it needs. And it's fundamental. I don't need to tell the audience today. It's fundamental, obviously, to society. The people that go through our university systems are the leaders of tomorrow. If we do not provide them with the tools to be successful, then we're not doing our job. So that we decided that for the next several years, we're going to focus on a three-pronged approach, really, to change. We need, across the discipline, the pedagogy, management, administrative, we need change in all of these areas, so that we have, at the end of the day, we have the graduates who have the ethical foundation, the knowledge, the skills, and especially the leadership, entrepreneurship, and creativity to succeed. So it's not just about, we found that through our workshops, there has been a lot more emphasis on the technical skills and not enough on what was earlier mentioned as the soft skills. And often these skills like leadership, creativity, etc., are really the critical things to allow a student to be successful. So when we look at TAP then in terms of how GCHERA can help, we see our educational, our universities as really ensuring that the young people are actually capable of doing the kinds of things that we talk about in TAP in terms of transformative change. Next slide, please. So, as I said, we believe that our focus on human capacity development is very nicely aligned with the TAP goal. And as I've already said, young people are clearly central to capacity development. So we need to ensure that our graduates have the tools to be able to catalyze the innovation that we're talking about. And so in thinking about how best to do that, how do you take theory into practice? And there are many universities that have done an excellent job of preparing their graduates for careers. But we are particularly struck by the work that was done by a small university in Costa Rica called ERT University. And this university certainly is being recognized internationally as a model for preparing ethical leaders who are agents of positive change. And so what we are planning to do with the help of a foundation is to actually see if we can find universities that are interested in this model and work with those universities to actually incorporate some of the key principles that they use at ERT University as part of their curriculum. Next, please. So we can't announce the details yet, but we're very close to finalizing the project, which is based on the ERT University model. And as I mentioned, our goal is to take the key elements of the ERT model and to include that in those universities who are interested in it. It is important for us to select universities that actually are already committed to this change. It cannot be top down. There has to be a commitment from the institution. And our particular foundation that is supporting us, their interest is initially in Mexico and Haiti. So we will start with those countries, and then we hope over time to expand it to other parts of the world. And hopefully we will be able to get the support of other funding agencies to help us do that. Next, please. So just a couple of slides very quickly about the ERT University. As I said earlier, their goal is to go beyond simply generating knowledge. Next, please. The mission is to prepare ethical leaders who contribute to sustainable development and construct a just and prosperous society. And this is just not words on a piece of paper. They actually live up to this model. Next slide, please. So they want to have impact in terms of alleviating poverty, promoting social justice, and build a future where communities achieve sustainable and shared prosperity. So a very important part of the way they operate is connecting the students who are at the University in Costa Rica, connecting them with their community so that the people in the community can actually see the impact of what students are doing. Next slide, please. So the formative pillars that they build it on, of course, we know that technical and scientific knowledge is important, that first pillar on the left, but of course it's not the only thing. And so I think the big difference with EPT University is that they place more emphasis on those other three pillars, the ethical, the personal development, the social and environmental awareness and commitment. They place more emphasis on those than I think that we often do in many of our institutions. And because of that emphasis, their students are better prepared for life and better prepared and interested in making a difference in the world around them. Next, please. So the experiential learning part, student-centered learning, it's all about, historically, when I was starting at the University of Alberta many years ago, the professor was the person that had the knowledge, and the professor's job was to fill the student with the knowledge that was in the professor's head. But nowadays, of course, there are all different sources of knowledge available to students. And so what we need to do is to really focus on the student and how do we facilitate the learning of the student. And through that facilitation and involving the student directly in an experiential way, we're going to do a much better job of educating the students. Next, please. One of the nice things about the EPT model is that the students and they're from about 40 different countries, 90% of them go back to work in their countries of origin, and they have tracked these students and they have seen that they have a positive and direct impact on the agriculture sector. So this is a key part of it, because often we find that international students don't always go back to their home country. But through the process they have of selecting those students and making sure that they select the students that are committed to that, their results are really outstanding. And in particular, that last bullet, 20% of the students actually have their own company. So that's a very important part of their background as well in terms of their education. A big emphasis not just on preparing students to get a job in government or in a company, but to actually start their own company. And I think we're finding more and more that is a critical part of helping our students be successful in life, is that they have the skill set and the confidence to actually go out and start their own company. Next, please. So then, in summary, we believe that GCHERA, because it's really the only body with a global representation of agricultural life sciences, and we're very happy to work with TAP and APAARI in facilitating capacity development, with particular emphasis on the human capacity development. The pilot project that I talked to you about is something that we hope to start early next year, and we're certainly interested in, our initial goal was to have it actually, that pilot across 9 different institutions around the world, but because of our funder was initially interested in Mexico and Haiti, it will, at this time, it will not be global in nature, but we're hoping that with other partners, we can expand it over the next several years to other parts of the world. And we're certainly interested in working, exploring with APAARI to see through your connections if we can do that. So thank you for your time. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much, John, for presenting these specific examples and the impact of such transformative activities in higher education on agriculture innovation systems. So I really hope that our participants are inspired to introduce similar activities in their own countries. And again, I would like to remind them to post their comments or questions that they might have for you in the chat box. So we will address these questions and comments after all the presentations. So our last speaker today is Dr. Nasreen Sultana. She's the country project manager of Sea Days in Bangladesh. Nasreen is coordinating country activities by bringing together key stakeholders in agriculture innovation in Bangladesh to assess their capacity development needs with the aim of promoting innovation. And Nasreen will present how the concepts that you have heard earlier from Manuela are being integrated in the development work to improve agriculture innovation systems in Bangladesh. Nasreen, please. Nasreen?
Hi, thank you, Martina, and hello to you all. I am Nasreen, the Country Project Manager of CIDAIS in Bangladesh, and I'm happy to share my experiences of CIDAIS, that is to strengthen agricultural innovation systems, not by looking at technical progress only, but also looking how the system of various innovation actors can be improved. Next slide, please. Bangladesh is one of the 8 piloting countries of CIDAIS project funded by European Commission and jointly implemented by FAO and AgriNatura in close collaboration with Bangladesh Agriculture Research Council with the following objectives: to develop a national vision for strengthening the agricultural innovation system, to strengthen a national platform for agricultural innovation, and to develop an action plan based on capacities needs assessment. Our current focus is to develop innovation capacities, mostly functional capacities, also known as soft skills. Of the 5 commodity-based innovation niches, you can say it's value chain, in 5 specific districts of the country with potential of scaling up. Next slide, please. Like most of the tropical countries in Bangladesh, capacity development in agriculture is commonly understood as enhancing technical capacity of individuals. Very little emphasis on enhancing the functional capacities such as mobilization, facilitation, negotiation, networking, and partnership building, that is the key capacities to bring new knowledge into economic and social use by farmers and agribusiness. Unlike most of the projects, CIDAIS project is addressing all 3 dimensions of capacity development, such as individual, here we call niche level, organization, and enabling environment, focusing functional capacities but not ignoring technical capacities. Tropical Agriculture Platform Common Framework proposes a 5-stage cycle for the operationalization of capacity development interventions in agriculture innovation systems. Our second speaker, Manuela Busciarelli, is already introduced and explained the steps. These cycles stimulate learning and interaction between 3 capacity development dimensions. We successfully have implemented stage 1 to 3 in Bangladesh, and now we are implementing on stage 4. Next slide, please. The project has been implemented in the country from September through 2015, starting with scoping studies, that is the first step of CD cycle, galvanizing and commitment, with the objectives to better understand who are the actors of the agricultural innovation systems and their roles, and to identify potential organizations with which the CIDAIS project could work during project implementation. During the scoping study, it was observed that there is huge innovation potential in agriculture through a large number of agricultural research and extension organizations, universities, NGOs, and even at farmers' level. Farmers are also producing new knowledge and products. However, actual benefit from this innovation is limited due to lack of proper coordination and coherence in this sector. Moreover, there is no yet a defined agricultural innovation systems coordination mechanism in the country, and system thinking is somewhat limited in many institutions. Next slide, please. Visioning, the second stage of seed capacity development cycle, was implemented in Bangladesh by organizing an inception workshop in December 2015 with the objectives to bring together the representatives of actor groups within the agriculture innovation systems to build the common understanding and vision for agricultural innovation systems. A total 82 individuals from representatives of farmers group, extension service providers, agro-business, universities, research institutes, policymakers, and NGOs attended the workshop. Gender balance was considered during the selection of participants. During the workshop, participants were requested to propose niches to work with the project. Total 31 niches were proposed and scored by the participant using a set criteria. Criteria are presented in the next slide. Next slide, please. Important criteria for scoring was alignment with national priorities, multi-stakeholder involvement, potential for livelihood improvement, and scalability. The top 10 scoring niches were selected. After profiling, niches were placed at technical advisory group meeting for discussion. Finally, steering committee approved 5 niches to work with CDA's project. Next slide, please. Our current focuses are on these 5 niches such as mango, pineapple, tomato, cultured fish, and poultry, aiming transformation of these niches from subsistence agriculture to market-oriented enterprises. And all these 5 niches are distributed in 5 different corners of the country. Next slide, please. And next one. Okay, it's okay. In the process of capacity development, we assessed actual capacity need of the niche partners using several tools such as timeline analysis, problem and solution tree, net map, semi-structured questionnaire, visioning, and action plan. Prior to the capacity need assessment, we trained 17 young qualified professionals as national innovation facilitators for facilitating capacity need assessment process. Results of capacity needs assessment workshop were validated with stakeholders and technical advisory group task force members. To broker effective partnership for enhancing innovation. To broker effective partnership for enhancing innovation capacity of agriculture stakeholders. Sorry, there are new noise.
Yeah, just a second, Nazreen. I'm trying to find the participant. Somebody has unmuted their microphone. Okay, I think I got it.
Okay.
Go ahead.
To broker effective partnership for enhancing innovation capacity of agriculture stakeholders, CDA's project organized a marketplace event on 13th September 2017. It brought together representatives of 5 niches and the respective national innovation facilitators, along with the technical support from the respective department and organizations. Niche representatives displayed their innovation activities, challenges, support need, success, etc., presenting in posters. Today's project invited government officials, development partners, NGOs, and public and private service providers, such as financial service providers with experiences and activities relevant to CDAs and that could be willing to develop partnership with the innovation niches. Good responses was observed among the invitees. Interest in collaboration with niches varies from 65 to 80% depending on niches. Next slide, please. Universities are the core component of agricultural innovation system concept. Our second presenter, Manuela Bucciarelli, already has presented, explained, illustrated this concept, and she also presented the potential role of universities in CDA's system. Next slide, please. In Bangladesh, universities are involved in different stages of capacity development for agricultural innovation system project implementation as activity consultant and facilitator. For scoping study, a consultant was hired from Bangladesh Agriculture University, Mymensingh, and for inception workshop and marketplace, the same person was hired as the facilitator. As a national innovation facilitator for capacity need assessment facilitation, a faculty member of Bangabandhu Sheikh Mujibur Rahman Agriculture University, Gazipur, was trained and employed in capacity need assessment process. As activity participants, faculty members of Bangladesh Agriculture University, Mymensingh, Bangabandhu Sheikh Mujibur Rahman Agriculture University, Gazipur, Shere Bangla Agriculture University, Dhaka, Chittagong Veterinary and Animal Science University, Chittagong, and Daffodil International University, Dhaka, attended inception workshop. Faculty members of Bangladesh Agriculture University and Bangabandhu Sheikh Mujibur Rahman Agriculture University interviewed during scoping study, and a faculty member of Bangladesh Agriculture University attended 3 days capacity need assessment workshop of fish niche at Mymensingh. As advisory committee member, faculty members of Dhaka University as Jahangirnagar University are in our technical advisory group member and technical advisory group task force members. I believe universities can play important role for sustainability of tropical agriculture platform common framework and can contribute to change the livelihood of smallholder farmers and small and medium agro-based entrepreneurs in tropical region. Hope you have enjoyed. Thank you all.
Thank you very much, Nasreen, for providing another example of how the common framework can be integrated into practice, and also some examples of how you are engaging universities in Bangladesh. So if our participants have any questions to Nasreen, please post them in the chat box. Okay, so we will soon go through all these questions that you have posted also for the presentation of Manuela and for John. Now, before we have a look at these responses or questions that you have posted, I would like to ask all of you to start posting your inputs to the 5 discussion questions that were sent to you before this webinar. At the beginning of the webinar, I have also posted these 5 questions in the chat box, so you can see them at the beginning of the chat. I will repost them again in a minute. We will cover these questions after all the presenters' response. And again, I will post these questions in a minute so that they are there for easy reference. So while this is being done, let us have a look at the questions that you posted in the chat box. So the first questions are addressed to Manuela. How does TAP promote shift in mindset and attitude? This is the first question. Maybe, Manuela, you can address them one by one. Is that okay?
Yes, that's okay, Martina. Yes, so regarding the shift of attitudes, obviously changing habits and attitudes require time. the common framework itself, I see that through the application of the framework itself, we can promote a shift of behavior, or change of behavior, especially related to promoting the importance of functional capacities and not only technical capacities, but also the entire TAP common framework approach promotes the involvement of facilitation and needs assessment that allow to create this shift in attitudes and perceptions.
Okay, thank you, Manuela. Another question is, how is common framework applicable to all regions that possess different knowledge and different capacities?
Yes. Well, as we mentioned, we are now testing and piloting the common framework in 8 countries, the CDICE countries. This is part of the effort to try to understand whether this abstract or theoretical concept can be actually applied in the country context. So this is part of the experiment, and by the end of this project we will have acquired knowledge and experience and lesson learned that can tell us whether this concept of the common framework are actually suitable for the different contexts. I would like to highlight that the common framework is not a strict jacket, one size fits all, but it requires that it's adapted to the specific context of the country. So by the end of the project, of the CDICE project, we'll be able to share some lessons and experience on how the common framework has been adapted and adopted in the countries.
Okay, thank you, Manuela. Participants from India as well as Pakistan, they are asking whether there are any plans to start this project in their countries.
Yes, well, TAP works very closely with partners and regional partners, for instance, through APAARI, which is helping to advocate and to promote the concept of the common framework in new countries in the region. And as far as I know, APAARI is also scoping for new projects involving new countries in the Asia region. So Pakistan, I've seen, and India could be some of the countries where APAARI could explore promoting the concept and initiating projects on the common framework.
Okay, thank you, Manuela. There are 3 other questions that are related, so I will read all 3 of them and you can probably give one similar answer. Mm-hmm. There are many agriculturists and small farmers around Asia and the Pacific. So how does TAP ensure that innovation is welcome and put afloat by these poor people? Another question is how a resource-poor farmer gets to know TAP, and how can the common framework enhance the livelihoods of farmers? So these 3 questions are very similar. So perhaps you can give your view, your answer.
Yes, regarding the engagement of poor smallholder farmers, through our country implementation, through the innovation partnership, we actually involve farmers at local level, at community level, which are part of these multi-stakeholder partnerships. The project itself is not directly targeting livelihoods. This is part of the impact of the project, which cannot be measured in a short term. But the idea is that through the adoption of the common framework principle and concept, this shift in the way of capacity development is conducted and implemented in the country can then lead to greater impact for small farmers. But this is something that is beyond the time frame of the project. And through the CDICE experiment, we'll be able to capture some lessons learned that can help us to also to assess whether this approach was valid and what was the impact that it made. I'm not sure if I addressed these questions.
Thank you, Manuela. If there are still some clarifications needed, please, participants, please post them in the chat box. Otherwise, there will also be some space for follow-up after this webinar. But if you have any immediate questions, please put them in the chat box. Other questions? Okay, Manuela, I think we move on to John. John, there is a question from Bangladesh, whether it is possible for Bangladesh agriculture universities to join GCHERA and how?
Well, our current membership structure is our members are made up of associations that are either national or regional associations. The criteria are that the association has to have at least 5 university members to be eligible for membership of GCHERA. However, it is also possible to be an associate member for an individual university. Perhaps the best way to deal with this is to contact me directly and I can provide more details. We're certainly interested in expanding the GCHERA network, and so I'd be happy to, if you email me directly with the information I already provided in terms of contact, I'm happy to follow up with you.
Okay, thank you, John. There was also a question, I'm not sure to whom it was, whether to Manuela or yourself. It was about how can entrepreneurs' skills be enhanced? I understand that this comes from your presentation when you shared that example, right?
Right. So I guess I'd like to start with the fundamental piece, which is when you think about the challenges that we face in the world today, the solutions have got to be provided by human beings. So the question I have is, are we doing a good job of preparing, and it's the young people that are going to be there to deal with the challenges. Are we doing a good job in preparing those students to actually be problem solvers and to deal with agricultural innovation and all the other things that we need to deal with in our world today? And the answer is that I think many institutions can do a lot better than they're doing right now. As part of our background work, we learned that universities, and this is not a surprise, are slow to change. And universities are being criticized that even though the world has changed dramatically in the last 20 years, that our curriculum in many institutions has not changed. The pedagogy hasn't changed dramatically to take into account the changes that have taken place in communication, other sources of information, etc. So what we're really saying is that we want to work with those universities who are willing and able to make these changes, so that instead of the historical piece where many university graduates were prepared for jobs in government, but as the number of students in universities has increased dramatically, and the jobs in government at the same time have decreased, we need the students need different skill sets, and that is what we want to work with our institutions to help make that transformation. And those institutions that have work to make that transformation have been very successful, and their graduates have been successful. So we see ourselves, if you like, as a catalyst, and this is going to be a long-term project. It's not going to happen overnight, because any changes in curriculum, it takes time before students go through it. But one has to start somewhere, and already we're seeing evidence, in institutions like at the university, that when you do make those changes, you do have impact, and I think it's going to be a lot easier to do the kinds of things that we've been talking about with CDAIS, etc., if the graduates are well equipped to deal with those types of challenges.
Okay, thank you, John. And there's another question. How is GCHERA helping to analyze the impact of these successful innovative approaches that you mentioned in your presentation?
Yeah, and I guess that is where we have, for example, we had a workshop in Nanjing a few weeks ago, where we had people from different institutions talking about what they were doing at their institutions, and through that then sharing with each other our experiences, so that part of the analysis is giving people an opportunity to share best practices, to discuss how that impacted the students, to look at try and see how students did after graduation, whether they went back to their home country, what kind of jobs they got into, whether they were successful in their careers. So again, it's what we're doing is a small part of the bigger picture, but we are starting with, as I said, with a small group of universities, and we hope over time this is a global movement that will gather speed. And so certainly happy to see that there are some universities that are interested in joining us in this effort, and I'm certainly happy to respond to them directly if they want to send me an email later.
Thank you very much, John. Thank you for these answers. Indeed, the participants can also share their comments and questions after this webinar. I will just briefly read some of the comments that came through the chat box. One is from the Tamil Nadu Agriculture Universities. They are saying that innovation, entrepreneurship, and outreach program in stored grain insect management is a model that is available with the university for developing countries. These are exactly the examples that we are looking for, that we would like to disseminate also through the Tapipedia that has been developed through TAP. Manuela introduced that. And if you have more such models, please share through Tapipedia. You can share it yourselves so that this information gets disseminated. There is another comment from Mr. Anjum involving kits of farmers in agriculture education to introduce innovation. That is another example. I mean, if you have such experience, please share it through Tapipedia, or even by sending it to APAARI, and we will also help to disseminate these good practices and good models. Dr. Philip is commenting that methodology for documentation of agriculture innovation system process has to be popularized. Then also the strengthening of the PPP model would be useful. I wonder whether this is meant, of course, in the context of this introduction of the common framework. There is a comment or a question actually from Collins from Cameroon, who is thanking the presenters and asking how is TAP and GCHERA integrating agribusiness skills, market-oriented strategies in their strategies. So I wonder, maybe Manuela, could you react on this one? No?
Sorry,
Hello?
Martina, can you repeat the question? Sorry.
How is TAP and GCHERA integrating agribusiness skills, market-oriented strategies in their own strategies?
Okay. Does John want to say something about this on GCHERA?
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. The model that we're talking about at the university, and of course it's not the only model, but that the business skills are fundamental to what they do. Every student actually has to start a small business as an undergraduate, so they're directly involved in the challenge of what it takes to start the business. And it's not, the critical thing is not for that business to necessarily to be successful, but the fact that they went through the process, they're much more comfortable than when they graduate to start in a real business themselves. In fact, I should say that some of the businesses they start at university actually are successful as well. So I think by learning by doing is such a critical part of that educational model, and it's something that has been lacking, I think, in many universities.
Okay, thank you, John. I hope that you managed to answer the question for the participant. If not, again, there could be some follow-up questions if you like. There's another question related to capacity development for agriculture innovation systems. So how can the common framework on CD4As work under varied agroclimatic and educational background for developing nations? I think this was partly answered, but Manuela, would you like to add anything?
No, Martin, I think we already addressed this question. We can provide perhaps further comments to the report. We can share with participants if they require more information and specific answer to specific questions.
Okay, thank you, Manuela.
Could I comment, Martina? Mm-hmm. I think one of the challenges that we have, I think, with the TAP model is it's quite complex, and those of us that have been working at it for a few years, it's still challenging to how do you implement. The goals are we are certainly aligned completely with the goals. So I think it's important that as we try to think about implementation, especially at the country level and so on, that the terminology sometimes can be off-putting. that it can be, at first sight, it looks like, wow, this is really challenging. And so I think we may need to work together to simplify it a little bit so that we can get a bit more traction, I guess, when people are first introduced to it, that they're not, we don't cause them to back away because they think this is far too complex to be implemented. So I'm not being critical. I'm just saying it's a challenge that we all need to work together on to solve.
Okay, thank you very much, John. I believe that we have addressed all questions that were directed to the speakers. I will just check with Peter. Peter,
yes,
are there any
Martina.
other questions
There
that I might have missed?
There was one coming in to Nazreen. You want to address that?
Okay, of course. Sorry, I completely forgot about that one. Nasreen, there is a participant who is saying that he attended the Inception workshop and he's wondering what is the follow-up. Are there further activities on capacity development in Bangladesh?
Okay. Could you please repeat the question, Martina?
There is a participant, I think Mr. Hag, who attended the Inception workshop in Bangladesh, and he's wondering what is the follow-up, whether there are any further activities on capacity development in Bangladesh.
Okay. Thank you, Martina, and thank you, Shahidul Islam Bhai. I know him. He attended Inception workshop along with other 2 or 3 colleagues of Bangladesh Agriculture University. During my presentation, I mentioned that during the Inception workshop, we requested the participants to recommended to suggest niches, that is, with niches to work with CDAIS project. And during this, in fact, now we are working on 5 niches. These 5 niches were developed from their suggestion, arises from their suggestion. And we, I don't know what he exactly want to know, because the Inception work is the first stage. Based on that stage, we are progressing. We are going to next steps. So during the Inception workshop, it was like a awareness building session, and to collect the country's need where the CDAIS project can involve working with. So I don't know whether he is satisfied with this or not. After that, after that 5 niches selected from the Inception workshop, we so then we went for a capacity need assessment, and now we are planning intervention to improve the capacity of our niche partners. So now we are on the process of capacity development. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Nasreen. I think there's another question that is coming to you, and this is from India, from Hyderabad. What are some of the examples of soft skills which you are, I guess, introducing in your work in Bangladesh? That if you can outline these.
Yeah, okay. Thank you, Martina. And during the capacity need assessment, we identified several soft capacity development needs from the niche partners, like leadership, then business development, then partnership and collaboration. So now we are planning, depending on their capacity need development, now we are planning intervention. So we are now just the previous stage, what he is asking for. We are planning what kind of training we will provide them, Now, we will start that from the next month, December and January.
Okay, thank you, Nasreen. There's another question, not for you, but maybe for another speaker. From Anand Agriculture University. Basically, what they're saying is that the degree programs run by universities are as per the mandatory syllabus prescribed by the national regulatory body. How can the Agriculture University include these courses for capacity building and agriculture innovations? In other words, the framework which is being suggested. How can they include it if there are these restrictions from the national regulatory body? I'm not sure who would like to respond to this question, whether Manuela or John. John, I mean, you are having experience with basically introducing this kind of, efforts to change this curricula. What would you advise our participant from Anand on this?
Sure. Well, there are certainly challenges if you're in an environment where there are external restrictions that prevent you from changing the curriculum. But I think it's still possible to introduce elements like experiential learning and other elements that help students to get more directly involved in acquiring the types of skills that we talked about. So even without changing the curriculum, how you teach can have a big impact in terms of students' development. So I think that is one area that I think every university can work on. The other part is, I guess, we're all part of the bigger system. So I think universities need to push back against if they feel that there are external restrictions in terms of curriculum that they are not able to change. Well, if universities get together and approach government, surely over time it should be possible to convince the decision makers that there is need to make some of these changes for the benefit of the students. So again, it's not a short-term process, but I would hope that over time that the people would see the light and understand that if we want to prepare students properly, we have to do some of these things so that students have the skills that they need to have.
Okay, thank you very much, John. I guess there are some other comments as well. Tamil Nadu University is sharing some information about their portal that they are using. I mean, we will definitely check it out. Manuela is also sharing in the last comment on the chat. She's sharing some information on how you can access Tapipedia to upload any information about the successful models on capacity building that you are using in your universities. And many of you are already posting some answers regarding the 5 discussion questions that we have shared with you, and they are now also on the screen. Let me repeat these questions. What capacities are needed from the graduates to facilitate agriculture innovation processes? How does your university assess capacity needs for improving the agriculture innovation system towards transformation of the agriculture sector? What is the current capacity of your higher education institutions to strengthen CD4As in terms of functional capacities? What regional educational programs that focus on developing functional capacities are available in the Asia-Pacific region? And what are the gaps in developing innovation capacities in your country and region? Now, all of you have actually provided so many answers already related to these questions. And because we don't have time, we only have 5 minutes before this webinar is over, what I would like to suggest is that we are going to consolidate these answers related to these different questions and share with you the synthesis on which all of you will have a chance to comment and elaborate or even add other information as you are going to be reflecting on this webinar. And perhaps what we can do is now to, if there are no other questions, we can basically wrap up and close this webinar. As I said, there will be a lot of opportunities for discussion after the webinar. So we will consolidate these answers. So hope it is okay with everyone, because in Europe it is still afternoon, but it is very early for John and very late for some of our participants in Asia. So,
could I make one comment? Martina,
Yes,
could I
please.
make one comment?
Sure,
Yeah,
John.
I just wanted to, before we close, to thank you for doing this. I think it's a great idea to have this webinar. You put a lot of work into it, and it's because of that work it's been successful. So I'm very happy to continue working with you on this. This is, to me, step one, and I think together we can take it to the next level. So thank you, and thank Peter as well for doing such a great job.
Thank you very much, John. Any other speaker would like to say anything? Manuela or Nasrin?
Manuela,
Thank you.
yeah. Okay,
Sorry.
you're good now.
Thank you, Martina, for inviting me and giving a chance to speak in front of this kind of learned association. I am proud to be invited. So, and also already my capacity is developed for the developing for webinar. Thank you. Thank you, Peter and Martina. Thank you.
Thank you, Nasrin. Manuela, would you like to add anything?
Yes, I would like also to thank you for the good facilitation, and Peter. I think this was a great occasion and the first of this kind of webinar with academia and education sector. I think it was a very good occasion to present the TAP Common Framework and possible linkages with the higher education sector. So I hope the conversation, this is just the first step, but I hope this consultation and dialogue can continue further. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Manuela. And I would just like to add a few words. So today we heard the explanation of the key concepts under the Common Framework on Capacity Development for Agriculture Innovation Systems and how these are being applied in transformational learning projects by GCHERA and Earth University in Costa Rica, and how the Common Framework is also being applied in practice in Bangladesh. We also enjoyed active participation from the audience, even though it has been challenging at times because you had to post comments in the chat box. We really appreciate these comments from the respondents, from the participants. So the inputs we received from you on the 5 questions right now that I will synthesize are really important for us to help us understand what the current capacities of your institution and also institutions that you are working with are, and how these capacities are being assessed by your institution. So what are the capacity needs of graduates as well as your capacities? This morning, at the beginning of the webinar, we also heard from Ravi. He very nicely emphasized the role of higher education institutions that they are playing in transformation of societies. So indeed, you are really playing a very important role. So I really hope that this webinar will inspire all of you to start thinking about what actions you can possibly take to start having positive impact on agriculture innovation system. We are also hoping that the presented common framework and how it could be used in the university system as a transformational guide will be part of your reflection in the coming days. We are also hoping that you continue the discussion on the presented concepts with your respective institutions. And also you will think about your institution's possible involvement in the planned pilot projects through which we, the partners of the Tropical Agriculture Platform, envision to test this approach with those universities that are interested. So we will synthesize the outcomes of the webinar and share them with all of you. Many of you also requested a recording. So this we will make available on APAARI YouTube for you. And the synthesis will be used as a base for scoping of new activities with universities in 2018. And particularly, we will be working on the development of pilot projects, also with GCHERA and FAO for curriculum reform of universities that, of course, will be interested to work with us. So please reflect on this, think about this. And finally, I would like to thank today's speakers. So Ravi, Manuela, John, Nasrin, and of course, Peter, who has provided excellent technical support. And yeah, thank you. Thanks all of you. And please share your feedback with us. You all have my email, so please share it with us. And any comments that you might have on this webinar or on the topics that were presented today. So thank you again. Bye-bye.